Hey guys, Ben Big Stuff here. Welcome to another Gen 4 technical support video. We wanted to make this video to go over the transmission control that is built into the Gen 4 ECUs. The Gen 4 does have the ability to control either 4L60E or 4L80E transmission. We're working on a couple other transmissions at this time, the 6L series. We've got a couple other ones that we are working on, but right now the box built in has the 4L60E, 4L80 control. Now, what you're going to want to do is look at the bottom of your ECU. If you didn't order brand new with it, you're going to look for a sticker on the bottom, and if it's got the transmission option, it'll have a little red box next to it, okay? So if that red box is checked, you're all good to go. If you do not have it, you'll have to send it back to us. We can actually modify the board. The factory versions of the ECU do not come configured correctly to use the transmission controls. So you guys send it back to us. We do a quick little update to the board, send it back out to you, and now it'll work properly, okay? If you also don't have the transmission option as of this video, it's $150. You'll get that upgrade to the actual app itself where the transmission will be able to be shown, such as how it is right here in this tree. If you do not have the transmission icon or the transmission menu does not populate on your ECU when you're logged in, that means that the ECU does not have that option installed. All right, so let's just go over some tables here real quick. And everything that we're going to talk about is on our website. So if you come over here to www.bigstufftpm.com, we have a tech info section. And over here in this Gen 4 tech and support, down here in the lower left-hand corner, we basically broke out all the different menus into their own manuals, because the manual is very big. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in here. But we broke out all these individual menus, and one of them is for the transmission section itself as well, which is this guy right here. Okay, transmission 4L6080E. So over here you can see, here it is. This is the actual transmission manual. Goes over the wiring harness, how to install everything. It goes over the pinouts, the input sensor if you're running a 4L60. An input sensor running a 4L80. The 4L60 only uses the output sensor. So everything you need to know is all configured inside here, or it's talked about inside here, okay? So basically, the transmission programming comes with a default calibration, and you have the ability to alter all of those curves completely independent as far as however you want to run with your desired mile an hour shifting of gears. Everything basically, it goes back to mile an hour and throttle. So you got to have very good solid inputs from your TPS sensor as well as your drive shaft sensor in order for all this stuff to work correctly, okay? So go back to the software. You can see here, the first thing obviously you have to do is enable it. Okay, you got to choose the actual transmission that you have. You got to choose either 4L60 or 4L80E. You're going to put the number of gears. Both have 4 gears. You're going to enter your gear ratio. You're going to enter your tire diameter. Very important that these are set correctly, because if you don't, then it's not going to be able to calculate the mile an hour correctly in order to actually activate and drive the transmission correctly, okay? There's a torque converter control rate in milliseconds, delay, and minimum mile an hour. All these question marks here, can go over everything here for you, okay? This just gives you more information. But you can see here that we have the torque converter control, your line pressure control, reduction in reverse, minimum shift time, and then we also have some engine braking, downshift mile an hour, okay? These are the baseline values. Again, these typically work for most guys here. You have the ability to adjust all this stuff if you want. But these are the base values that we recommend going with, okay? Over here, you're going to have a shift curves BigCom view. This is the view that we typically recommend working with. So you can see here that in this table, depending on where your throttle position is at in first gear, this is going to shift to the next gear. So if I was at 50% throttle at 42 mile an hour, I'm going to shift up into the next gear. When I go into second gear, if I'm at 50% throttle, I'm going to upshift into 68. If I'm at third gear going into fourth gear, about 50%, I'm going to go around 81 miles an hour, then I'll go into fourth. So how you want to configure these tables is just think of each gear if you had a manual transmission. And when you shift the car in manual, that's what you'll want to set these at typically for max. So at 100% throttle at 46 miles an hour is where first is going to shift out of. And you can see it's a somewhat gradual slope to get there based on TPS. So the shift RPMs, especially when you're wide open throttle, it's wherever you actually want it to shift based on that speed and RPM. So that's why these axes are fully configurable based on where you're at for your combination. And a lot of this is torque converter dependent. Some lock up very early and hold the motor back. Some are very loose and will take some tweaking. But the biggest thing to remember here is just that when you're going wide open throttle, this is where you're going to want it to shift, because way over here is 100%. So this won't shift until 95 miles an hour when you're in second gear. Okay, then everything down, from there goes lower. Now, what you got to be aware of here too is we have an upshift line and we have a downshift line. All right, the downshift line means that when we get below this mile an hour in this gear, we're going to go back down to the gear below it. All right, so if I was at below 21% throttle, okay, and I was at if I was at 21 miles an hour and I was at 38% TPS or lower, I would go down. I would go back down into first, okay? And the biggest thing here is you want to make sure that these tables do not overlap each other. The green should always be above the red. And you can see here we've got a gap, right? You always want to have a bit of a gap there, because what will happen is if they're backwards, then the transmission can get all miscombobulated, and then your downshift is going to be higher than your upshift. You don't want to do that. You always want to have a spacing in between these numbers here. Okay, so in this application, you can see here that we've got our dots, our green line dots are well above our red lines, and that'll mean that we're not going to overlap in these cases for those gears. Very important that you do that, okay? So the big column view is we typically recommend to use. We also just have a standard shift curves up-down view, okay? And basically, we recommend just using the shift curves from the big column view. And again, the biggest thing here is that you just want to make sure that these do not overlap. Sometimes these don't look exactly the same. That's okay. We recommend just utilizing the shift curve big column view, and that should work perfectly fine for what you're trying to accomplish here, okay? The next here is going to be my torque converter clutch curves. And basically what will happen here is that it's going to give you a lockup mile an hour and an unlock mile an hour, okay? So you got a couple menus here. This is for fourth gear, and then you also have one for third gear, okay? This is based on standard configuration. You can change this to be however you want it to be, but this is talking about in third and fourth gear when the actual transmission will lock up, all right? So it unlocks at this lower value and it locks at this value, and it's all based on the throttle, okay? So this is, again, why throttle and mile an hour is so important when you're going through these curves. Okay, fourth gear torque converter clutch, again, it'll lock up at 25% throttle, 62 mile an hour. That's when it's going to hunker down, and you'll hear it actually lock up. Solenoid valve will drive it close, and now the actual torque converter is locked. All right. You also have the ability to, in each gear, okay, go through and change the actual line pressure, okay, and that's what this force motor control is doing here, okay. So 100% actually means that you're unlocked, so which makes sense, right? If we're down at 0% throttle, 4% throttle, we do not want to have it all locked up. But as we go much faster and we got a lot more throttle position going on, we want to lock up that gear. So basically, anything past 43% throttle in first gear, we're going to have the bypass is going to basically be fully closed. We're not going to bypass anything, so line pressure will be maxed out. And again, you can go through each gear. You can change it however which way you want to go, okay? Totally up to you. You can use our default. You can start playing with this. Basically, this is going to show how hard the shifting of the gears is going to be based on your throttle position. So if you want to have it to where it hits really hard and you're not really going that fast, get the chirp out of the rear tires, this is that line pressure curve that you'll manipulate to get more out of the transmission itself, okay? So that's basically it. Again, this has been around for a very long time. The 4060E and 480Es are still very plentiful. We still have a lot of guys that run them. They're great transmissions, a lot of options for you as far as torque converters, manufacturers, a lot of different ways you can go. And it's all pre-configured, ready to go. So if you get this, pop it in. As long as they have the options, we can read our sensors. This will work fine out of the box. And then you can go and again, we recommend this big column view is where you actually go and you start tweaking on the shift points here to get the transmission to work correctly. Okay? Any questions, by all means, give us a shout. Oh, one more thing. What you want to do is over here are the system menu and operating configuration. This is very important, okay? This may not be configured correctly if your ECU didn't come from the factory with the transmission control. you have to make sure that over here under the TOS sensor type, okay, TOS stands for transmission output speed sensor. They're both set to VR, okay? If you have a 4L80E, you're going to have an input shaft. It's going to have 40 teeth on the input shaft. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. On the dry shaft, you're going to have 40 teeth, okay? On the output shaft of transmission, it's 40. That's what the transmission output speed sensor is. Then you're going to have the TIS right here, again, which is a VR sensor. It's a 2-wire magnetic. These are both 2-wire magnetic sensors, okay? And the 4L80E is going to have this one. This is set for 31. If you have a 4L60, you don't care about this. It doesn't matter. Your ECU will still come with the ability to read the TIS, but because the 4L60 doesn't have it, you don't have to have this number correct. But if you have the 4L80, then yes, that number has to be correct so we can read that sensor to actually run the transmission correctly, okay? And that's basically it. You can also see here in the pin configuration section here that when the transmission is selected, these digital inputs are grayed out, okay? This stuff that's grayed out here, these are used for the 4L80 and 4L60 transmission control. That's why they're grayed. You can't use them because the transmission control uses them. You can come over here to the output section, and again, you can see here that on these two pins here, shift solenoid A and shift solenoid B, same thing, okay? They're grayed out. If it's grayed, it's because something is using them. In this case, because the transmission control is enabled, that's exactly why it's being used, all right? So a lot of times we'll get a call, hey, I can't adjust this. Yeah, you can adjust it because it's not, you can. It's configured by the software. It blocks it out because something else is using it, okay? Any questions at all, you can refer to our website, BigStuffTPM.com. Send us an email if you have any questions, support@BigStuffTPM.com. Thanks for watching this video. Please check out our social media on Facebook and Instagram and give us a shout if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.